Welcome back to Amateur Sports TV. I'm your host, Graeme Forsyth, for this edition of Coffee with Graeme. It's a beautiful morning here in Winnipeg. As always, we've been getting some great weather here as of late. Today, we're going away from the athletes. We're actually talking to an instructor, and he was my instructor at my time at Arts and Technology Center. The broadcast media instructor, Ken Plaetinck, is joining us today, and we're joined by Ken now. Ken, how's it going?
It's going good. How about yourself, Graeme?
Going good. And it's been a while since I've seen you. How are things going?
Well, it's a bit of a change from the teaching aspect. Used to, being in a classroom all day with students, but it's not a horrible thing. We can still do some stuff, but just not, all the great stuff we were doing before.
Yeah. So before we get into what you do at ATC as the broadcast media instructor, I know that you have a big background in broadcasting in general. So I just want to start off. You went to school, and am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, I went to school in two schools actually. One here in Manitoba, one in Calgary. I went to high school at Tech High School and took the broadcasting program there. And then my career changed, and I ended up going over to the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology in Calgary. I took their cinema, television, stage, and radio arts program, and graduated there with a broadcast news major to work, behind the scenes in television news. So, in front of the camera as well. But I did kind of both for a little while, and then worked my way into the industry.
So, entering into the industry, did you always want to be on TV, or did you want to be a director? What's your biggest enjoyment of it all?
Well, when I started in the industry, the job I wanted was Vic Routers. I wanted to be a curling commentator. I love curling. I used to curl quite a bit when I was at a younger age, and I have a couple of friends that are Olympians and have gold medals to show it. And I wanted to do that job. I wanted to call curling. And, to get there, you got to do sports. So I thought what a great way is to work my way from to the newsroom into the sports room and be a sportscaster, which I did for a number of years in Brandon, Manitoba. I covered the Wheat Kings and I covered local curling. I did a lot of things, but never quite got up to that Vic Router status, which I would have loved to have done during my time.
And Vic's a legend. We all know that. While you were attending school in Alberta, I remember you telling us the story in class that one of your biggest first interviews was actually with a curler. I forget who exactly that was, but how was that experience like?
It was fantastic. It was actually with Jeff Stoughton here in Manitoba. I came home for the winter holiday, and I had asked Jeff if he would do an interview. I had a project I had to do where it was a radio documentary. And I did it all about curling, how it's grown, its past, its history, where it's going to head in the future, stuff like that. So I kind of figured, well, what's the worst I can do? I can call him. He says no. And he was at the time, he was one of the best curlers in the world. And I called him, and he was like, yeah, sure. Come to the Air Canada Center downtown Winnipeg, and that's where I work. And I can give you some of my time. So I said, great. So I told my instructors, I was so excited. I was like vibrating practically. And they said, well, take home the equipment you need to Winnipeg and do the interview. And I'm like, are you serious? They said, yeah, whatever you need. And I ended up heading off down there. And I got to say, Jeff was a class act. He was a gentleman through and through. Was so good to me, and I actually even called him back afterwards to thank him for such a wonderful interview. It's those guys that make it worthwhile. Like when you're in the industry and you're starting out as a sports guy, interviewing people you idolize is everybody's dream, right? And I've had the opportunity. I've met lots of NHL players. I've met professional curlers, athletes in every genre. And you're watching these people on television, and they're kind of hero status to you. After a while, it kind of loses its luster. I'm not going to lie. They're just regular people, and you realize that regular people with a great ability to do stuff. And they're the same as us, right? They put their pants on one leg at a time, and they're fantastic people to deal with. And some of them really helped propel my career. And they gave me the interviews I needed. They understand I was starting out in the industry, and I want to do a good job, and they were willing to help. And that's the one thing I really found about this the small sports community in places like Manitoba. They were so great, from AAA midget hockey to the baseball leagues in Western Manitoba, curlers. It didn't matter who it was. They all were just fantastic to get your career started. And I look back at those years. I was 6 years. I was a sports director. And they were some of the best years of my life. And I really enjoyed my time in that part of the industry.
Nice. And I like what you said, that they're athletes, and all these big athletes are just like us. And I think we forget that. I think we always love to idolize the athletes, right? But we got to remember that they started out just like us, and they're regular people too. So your first job was in Brandon. I just want to get to know, like, how was that whole experience, your first job in Brandon?
Well, actually, Brandon wasn't my first job. It was actually my second job, but my first sports job. I started out in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, in a television station that was literally an old house that was gutted, and they actually built a television station inside of it. I think the master bedroom was the boss's office. The side bedrooms were control and traffic. The garage was actually engineering, and in the basement was the newsroom. And it was tiny. There was probably about 14 people that worked in the entire TV station. Wow. So it was really, really small. And then I moved up to Brandon, and our newsroom was 14 people, let alone all the production staff and front office staff. So I went from a really tiny station to a much larger station, and really got the idea how the television industry works. So when you're in a small market, what you don't realize is, there's 14 people, but all the jobs still need to get done. So who's going to shoot the commercial if you don't have a commercial videographer, which is what most stations would have? And guess who it was? It was the news guys. When you weren't doing a news story, you were shooting commercials. There was commercials across Canada that were actually produced right in Swift Current, and I was the voice guy for it. And you'd hear my voice throughout the commercial, and people would go to you like, I've heard your voice before, and I don't know where. And you'd be like, do you watch a lot of agricultural commercials and stuff? Like, I remember you from so-and-so and such a place. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I do the voice work sometimes. So, but in small markets, that's what you have to do. And even when I went to Brandon, I had to do commercial work as well, because we were voice actors as well. So you had to do some of that stuff. But it gave you a great opportunity to really, in those smaller markets, to hone your skills. And it's those connections you make with those people at the beginning levels. Like Jordan Tutu was a Brandon Wheat King for 4 or maybe 5 years of my career there. And Jordan was fantastic. And look where he went today. I mean, he's a role model to kids. He's he's done so much for the industry, the sports industry, and now the broadcast and the community now. He was one of the guys that helped me out throughout my wings. And I used to have great personal conversations with him, and we could laugh and have a great time. But it's those connections you make in smaller markets, because, they're growing up, they're learning too, and they kind of last a lifetime. So it's really fantastic in that respect, going to Brandon and working in a station like that.
And do you think that it's kind of important to kind of not only do one job, but do other jobs kind of to build your skill set and stuff?
Yeah, like a lot of people that go want to be in sports, they say to me, I just want to do one job. I want to be Vic Router. And that's where my head was at when I started out of college. Like, that's the job. I'm going to start applying for it. Maybe TSN will hire. TSN's not going to hire you. They want you to cut your teeth first, right? So you go to the small markets, you do these gigs, and you start getting practice, and you get better and better at it. And what I found was what really what's created my career was the versatility. So I left high school with the skill to be able to use a video camera, because I took a program like that. Yeah. And then when I got to college, I gained the skills on how to be a reporter. So where all my classmates were just reporters out of college, I was a reporter camera operator. So now I could go to a station where I could do both jobs. Well, that's great for any employer. And then from there, I like, okay, now I want to do weather. Now I want to do news. Now I want to do agriculture. Then I'm going to do sports. So now all of a sudden I got a background in a bunch of different areas, and it continues on. And then, of course, right when I was in the industry, there was no computerized editing. Now it is. Guess what you did? You learned how to do it right away. And then that gave you the ability to basically, edit and keep up with the times. And as the times were changing, I had to be versatile. And I learned how to stream. And now I do a lot of streaming in Canada. I do it for professional sports. I do it for companies. I get hired from a lot of people on the side to do sporting events. And those are the things that, the versatility of having all these different skill sets makes a huge difference. And it's the one thing I'd push on to any young person that's coming into this industry. Don't get your head set on, I'm going to be a cameraman. Yeah. You'll probably be a cameraman, but you're also going to be a cameraman that can edit, shoot, write, report, set up equipment, do a bunch of different things. So get the skill sets.
And you talked about how connections are a big thing in the industry. And I think that it kind of goes without saying in any industry that networking is so huge. So how big really is the networking aspect of telecommunications than just the communication industry in general?
Well, it's funny is that you hear this from a lot of people is, how'd you get your job? And a lot of people, I applied. But then you find out a little bit further on, it's like, I applied and I had a friend that worked there. And the friend put in a good word for me. And that friend you met at your first job. And then that so on, keeps growing. Then you go to your second job, you meet 25, 30 new people. And they move and they go around the world and they go to different places. And then they find out you're looking for work. They call you up and they say, hey, apply here. I'll put a good word in for you. It's networking. And I can honestly say that I've probably had 10 jobs in my life, 9 of which were through networking. And the only one that wasn't is actually the one I'm currently working at right now. And I got that on my skill set. So does it work? Yeah, of course it works. Networking is huge. And I don't think it matters what industry you're in. I mean, the longer your scope and your web's out there, the better off you're going to be. As I say to kids, like if you take a look at apps like LinkedIn, that's one of the greatest ways to connect with people, industry professionals, and get to know them and talk to them. And whether it's a hockey player talking to other hockey players, maybe they're going to give them an idea on starting a business for hockey related stuff, or maybe they can give them some advice. Or they'll say, hey, look, I'm looking for a person to hire. Are you interested? I've connected with you on LinkedIn. I already know you. So it's that first footstep into the doorway and get a foot in there. If you don't do that, I find that, it's a lot harder in this industry today. So yeah, it's totally important.
Yeah, for sure. And it's such a competitive industry, like a bunch of industries, but this is one of the most competitive for sure. So back when you started, TV was pretty standard, pretty simple. You had the commercials, all that. It ran on script. And then as time has changed, we're seeing more podcasts, we're seeing more non-traditional media. So what are the biggest changes that you've seen in the industry from when you've started up till now?
I'd say 2 things, and they both relate to each other. The first one is social media. I mean, it's changed the way we communicate. When I was in college and then getting into the industry, the only way you could get your message across was through broadcasters, whether it's radio, television, or print. It's just broadcasters and media, right? But now your cell phone makes you a broadcaster. You can go on any kind of social media app, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can post something immediately for people to see. So that's changed everything. So we didn't have, like in Winnipeg, only 20 broadcasters between radio and television and print. Now we have 1.5 million. That's the population of Manitoba, and they all have the ability to go to the local hockey game and stick up a camera and record their kid playing, and people can watch it. So that's really, to me, that's what's really changed. Really, that's the number one thing. The number 2 thing I would say that's been really big is the ability to stream. And as much as that, like I said, they kind of relate, is when streaming came out at first, people were like very reluctant because, of course, you look at it and on your computer screen, as you're probably watching right now, the image would be like, probably about that big on the entire computer screen. And now, I mean, you can do full HD, you can do 4K. It looks phenomenal on your 65-inch TV, and you're sitting at home watching, as I used to cover Red River Co-op Speedway. You can do local curling, all that stuff from the local events that never got coverage before. In fact, would never really get the time on the local broadcasters. Now get coverage, and you can just take a look at the stuff we do on LRSD.tv. I mean, high school amateur sports was well covered by Shaw. They did a fantastic job, but when the mantle passed over and they had to get somebody else to do it, LRSD TV steps up. And then all of a sudden, right, you can watch the game just like you're watching a TSN game. And there's graphics and there's instant replay and there's announcers and reporters and questions being asked. And you're watching the game and you're doing this with a small group of people, and you can do it now. Blows my mind. You can get into the game quite easily.
Yeah, for sure. And it's crazy how far along the industry has come and how the industry is going to keep changing as well. Well, we're going to go to our first commercial break here. So we're going to throw it to commercial. We're going to hear from our supportive sponsors here on the show. Ken, it's been great talking with you so far. After the break, we're going to talk some more. So stay right with us. Here with Ken Plaetinck on Amateur Sports TV here on Coffee with Graeme with your host, Graeme Forsyth. And before the break, we were talking to Ken about how he got started in the industry, where he's seen the industry change, and just his background in the broadcasting industry in general. So now we're going to move into your career as a instructor. So you were talking about you went to Tech Voc and then you actually got to teach there. So how do you end up getting the job at Tech Voc?
Well, in fact, when I was a student at Tech Voc, my uncle was one of the teachers there. He worked at CBC for a number of years, and I had just gotten married, and I moved back from Brandon to Winnipeg, and I had got hired at Global TV, and I was doing actually behind the scenes work. And just by kind of fluke, they had a technician's job that kind of opened up at Tech Voc, and my uncle called and said, "Are you interested in taking it? Otherwise, I got to find somebody else." And I said, "You know what? I think I could use for a career change, just to do something a little bit different. Maybe work with kids." So I said, "I think I got a good temperament. I think I can handle this."
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I got hired by Tech Voc, and on the same day, I got offered a job at Global to be a sports reporter announcer, and it would have been my dream to get to Winnipeg. And I got offered two jobs on the same day, and I really hummed and hawed which one to take, right? And it took me a day before I kind of made the decision. And I said, "No, I'm going to give this education thing a try." I said, "What's the worst that can happen? I don't like it. I fall back in the industry." And what I did was, to be smart, is I actually kept working behind the scenes at Global for a number of years afterwards, just on evenings and weekends, and worked full days at Tech Voc, and I loved it. And my uncle was getting further on in his career, and he said, "I only got a couple more years left." He says, "Would you want to teach?" He goes, "I think you've got what it takes to be a teacher." And I said, "Sure." So I went and I started my education at Red River, and for a vocational teaching certificate, and just everything kind of snowballed. And the year my uncle decided to pull the pin, as they say, I had a bunch of people in for the job, and they were thinking, of hiring, and I was one of the candidates. And I did my interview, and I literally walked out of the room, went back down to my office downstairs where I was working, and kind of thought to myself, I said, "I think I did okay." And a minute and a half later, there was a knock on the door, and it was the principal, and he goes, "The job's yours if you want it. You did a fantastic interview." And I said, "Okay, great." And I just started my career there, and never really looked back as a teacher. I've enjoyed it, and I spent I believe 7 years at Tech Voc as a teacher, 4 years as a technician, and then an opportunity arose in the Louis Riel School Division, and that's where I ended up, and that's where I am now.
Awesome. And before I get into your time with ATC at the Arts and Technology Center, I just want to know, what were the aspects of the job at Tech Voc when you were an instructor?
So to understand a little bit about the high school curriculum is students in high school have the option of taking vocational courses. So on average in high school, you got to get roughly around 30 credits, depending on the high school, maybe one or two more, one or two less. And vocational credits are generally about 8 credits of the 30. So you spend about a third of your time almost with the same instructor through your high school experience. So you end up having these kids, and you get to know them really well. And I taught 11 and 12. We had a grade 10 instructor that taught a couple credits in there as well. And I worked with, funny, I worked with one of my teachers from TechVoc when I was a student. He was my co-teacher. So him and I taught together. So, the student outlasts the master. And I came around and I got to teach with him for a good 4 years. It was great. And after that, you just kind of, I was by myself for a few years, which was great. And then I moved on to ATC. But the day was interesting because in broadcast media, what you're actually teaching is the skill set, mainly behind the scenes, on how to do jobs in the broadcast industry. And the one thing that people think is like, well, once you learn to be a cameraman, you can do everything. No, that's not true, because there's cameramen, there's editors, there is behind the scene production people, directors, switchers, graphics operators, compositors. So there's a bunch of job roles. There's people that work in commercials. So that's a different type of production. And these are all different jobs. So how do you teach to that? You can't. You give what we call a generalist approach. You teach them basic skills. And then what happens is when they get hired at their first TV station or radio station or the production company, they start honing their abilities as they see fit. So they get hired as a graphics person. They get really good at being graphics. And it doesn't take long. You ask people that work in this industry, you say, it takes 6 months to a year. But it's that secondary kind of training that's free. While you're not even free, you're getting paid to do it. So it's really good in that respect. So a lot of these kids that come out of here, they get a very broad training. So we do everything from multi-camera production, which is like what TSN would do when they come down to a Jets game or a Bombers game, with the mobile truck and the cameras all over the place. They'll do some film. They learn about the camera. They learn about editing software from, not just Photoshop, but they learn After Effects and Premiere Pro. Kids will also learn basic script writing. I mean, that's one of the key things. They'll learn some radio production. There's also advanced courses like advanced multi-camera where they learn how to produce, not just actually get the show running and show the people the show. They actually have to learn how to produce it and assemble everything together. And they get some on-air abilities like yourself, right? And you've had an opportunity to do a lot of our on-air work throughout the courses of the years. So, we try to give them a good scope. And then if students say to me afterwards, say, I still want to keep going on to college. And I said, well, what did you like when you were here? And they said, I really wanted to be an on-air person. And I want to, really focus my attention to start off with that. And that's great because they got some great skills from the school that they can use in a bunch of areas that, as they hone their ability going to college, they can really focus in on the on-air job and, use all their tools to their ability, their best of their abilities. So we try to give them a good broad approach.
Nice. And let me tell you, the best years of my life were at ATC, actually, just getting that experience. You made it an enjoyable experience, too, just with your personality. You're quite a jokester. I gotta say that. Always cracking jokes, this guy. So you moved on to ATC from TechVoc. So what was the idea behind starting the program at ATC? Because there wasn't really a broadcast media program until you came along and really started it all.
Well, that's actually not quite true. There was a broadcast media program. They just had got the funding for it and they had started the ball rolling. They just didn't have an instructor hired. And, when the opportunity arose, I kind of looked at it. I was at the time living literally a stone's throw from the school. And I always thought to myself, wouldn't it be great at that vocational school if they ever had a broadcasting program? Man, I'd love to work there. I could walk to work every day. And so lo and behold, all of a sudden, I meet some people and they're telling me that there's a program starting there. And I was like, wow, I'd really be interested. And they were shocked that I would leave TechVoc. And I still love TechVoc. I was just there the other day talking to the instructors. And I said, but you know what? Sometimes it's good to have a change. And I threw my hat in the ring. And, a couple of weeks later, I ended up getting the call back for an interview. And then I got hired. And then I started the hard work of it's easy to have everything when it's already there for you. You just jump in and you start teaching. I had nothing. I walked into a program. We didn't have cameras. We didn't have editing suites. We didn't have anything. And we didn't have it for about a month into the program. So I had to teach students how to do stuff with very little. I think we had like a little photography camera, a couple of them that could record video. Yeah. And, some people go, well, that's enough. But I said, we're teaching professional broadcasting. So we need professional cameras. We need professional editing suites. And it comes with a big price tag, right? So, we had to kind of watch our dollars and cents because it's easy to spend as I say to anybody, if I wanted to buy a production switcher for our newsroom or for us going mobile, I could spend anywhere from $5,000 to $250,000.
Yeah.
Right, but you got to watch where you can spend it, because I gotta fill an entire program. So it was very difficult at first, because we were just trying to figure out what we could do, where we could do it. I didn't even have a classroom. They made a classroom for me, but the actual rooms I was using were being remodeled, so I didn't have a room, and it was a mobile room that we had to realize that maybe other people would use throughout the course of the day. So it was difficult. But I'll be honest with you, it was probably one of the best years of my life, because it was fun. Like, you were like, okay, we're going to buy this, and now we're going to get this. We're going to install this, and it's going to look, kids, I'm going to show you something new today. And a new piece of equipment would come in, and for like 2 days we'd play with it. And the kids were like just so thrilled with it. It was such a great learning experience. And I really got to say, the administration, both at the school level and the school board level, were fantastic. They saw the benefits of this program right away, and they really ran with it. And I couldn't thank them more for what they did. It was really, really, really good. So, we got through it all. And that first year, it's also kind of a blur how fast it went. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And as you guys have grown too, there's been more eyes on the program in general. There's been more people tuning into provincial championships as well. How happy are you with the growth that this program has shown?
It's been tremendous. We keep adding more and more, and every time it's the running joke is that every time an old student comes back, they see something new in the area. They're going, why didn't we have that when we were here? I'm like, well, it takes time to build it to where you want to be. And, it was a long process. And I look at it today and I think to myself right away, I'm like, I don't think I'd do anything different. There'd be a couple pieces of equipment I'd maybe not buy now that after I bought it, that kind of stuff. But no, the kids, they keep you young. And they made these years go by fast, and I wouldn't change anything. I think it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's really crazy how you guys have grown. There's been more eyes on you. There's been more people tuning into provincial championships, high school championships as well. And it's so cool that you guys really give people the convenience of they can stay home rather than coming to the game and watching it from home. Is that one of the biggest praises you guys have gotten, that consistency and that convenience?
We receive appreciation from it from a lot of different people, and sometimes it's just as simple as a YouTube comment that's on the stream afterwards. What I find is that there's a lot of people that have family, of course, being in Canada, we're a very multicultural society, that have family that don't live in Canada, or they live in Canada, but they're in the, outreaches of BC or Quebec or, the eastern provinces, that they can't watch their nieces or nephews, grandson, granddaughter play in these sporting events. And that's the great thing about streaming, is that now anybody can stream. This just doesn't mean LRSD TV. It means you can stream. I can stream. Grandma and grandpa can go to the game and stream it, and the rest of the family can watch it. And I mean, we're doing it differently. We're trying to do it as professional as possible. But it's that thing that you're, as we use the term at the station, it's our radio station slogan, connecting the community. We're connecting our community together with the stuff that we do. And when I came up with that slogan, I said, well, that's what the school is going to be about. It's connecting people. Because the one thing about ATC that nobody really understands, or some people do, I should say, but that people don't understand, is that it's not a regular high school. A regular high school has programs inside of its school and the students don't leave. But at ATC, it's different. So we're connected in the Louis Riel School Division, right? And the Louis Riel School Division has 7 high schools plus ATC would be 8. So those 7 high schools, for their grade 11 and 12 year, you have the option of taking half your courses at ATC and half your courses at your home high school. And those half of your courses at ATC could be in anything from broadcasting to culinary to automotive, all those programs. And then they go back to their regular high school and they take their Englishes, their math, their sciences, their phys eds to graduate from high school. So those kids, they're away. They're in a different building. So how do we connect them to their schools? Well, we do things with their schools. We broadcast their games, and that's how they get connected back with their community, their home community, and outside community. So we've really lived by that mantra the entire time that we want to be connected with all of our schools, not just the high schools, but all of our schools in our division. And that just lends that when we do a provincial championship, we don't only connect with our high schools, we connect with our entire province and outside of our province. So it's been eye-opening. We've had events where we've had 5,000, 10,000 people watching. Yeah. Sometimes it's on playback, but like it's one of those things. And when you see that, you're going, wow, it's pretty darn cool for a high school program. We had an event once that had 5,000 live viewers, 5,000 live viewers watching us. Yeah. And it's unbelievable. And I say to the kids, I said, hey, just so you guys know, there's 5,000 people watching you guys right now, so don't screw up. And they all start laughing, and they're going, no, seriously. I'm like, no, there's 5,000 people watching. And then you see the fear in their eyes, and they're like, hey, this is real TV now, so let's make sure that we're doing this right. And the kids just jump to it, and it's been fantastic. And I really can't complain. Like when it comes to that kind of stuff, the kids realize how serious it is, and they take it seriously.
That's awesome, too, that you really preach how serious the job has to be, because if you're working with professional equipment at such a young age or whatever age you are entering the program, it's professional stuff. So you got to take care of it. You got to treat it with care, and you just got to you got to treat it with respect, too. So you talked about how you guys really teach a bunch of aspects in the course, but what do some of the main aspects you guys teach in this course at ATC?
Well, just like the Tech Voc course, it's actually the exact same curriculum. So I just basically took my curriculum from one school and moved it to the other. So they learn multi-camera and advanced multi-camera production. So that's basically that going on live on a scene, setting up a bunch of cameras to a machine, and then live streaming it. And learning the job roles, because like I said, it's just not just cameramen. There's directors, switchers, script assistants, audio operators, graphic operators, hosts, floor directors or floor managers. Then there's like 5-6 camera operators. So I'm just sometimes teaching on the very first day they do our first live stream. I'm teaching 12 jobs at once, running from kid to kid to kid around to make sure they know what they're doing. And what's great about the program is I get a lot of past students that come out and they help in those departments. So that's really good. Yeah. So that's one of the courses two of the courses that we teach. Another one would be ENG, electronic news gathering. So they actually go out and we have a show called The Connection. And what The Connection is a bi-weekly, sometimes weekly, depending on how much content we have, newscast. And we treat it just like it's a real newscast that you'd watch on TV. Students go out, they report, they get a story, they come back, they edit it together, they write an opening for it for the anchor to read, and the anchor reads it live on camera at 11 o'clock on a Thursday, starting in mid-September, and it goes right until December 20th, around that time. And we do a show either for the first couple of weeks, every 2 weeks, and then we do it every single week. And we treat it like live TV news. And there's assignments on the board, and the students have to go and handle it. And there's a producer that looks over all the work to make sure it's correct. And we do that just like that. And that's our second semester. And then we do film production. So we do small films and documentaries. We get some background experience on how to do that. Students will also work on learning the camera, which is one of the most basic things. What's what television is? It's learning the camera. So we call it single camera production. And the kids will learn how to white balance, how to focus, how to frame up the shot, how to use audio on a camera, because they're all different, but you got to learn the basics. So that's another course. Then we teach video post-production, which is the editing aspect and the special effects aspect of audio, video editing. And then we also have an introduction course that teaches the basic script writing and getting started in television and radio. So that teaches some of the radio aspect as well, so that kids get some abilities in radio. And then, basically the last course that I haven't mentioned is we usually do a work experience component where kids will go to the industry for up to 4 weeks, and they will do work experience, doing 8 hours a day working with people. And a lot of our students get jobs right out of high school. So that tells you the importance of a program like this is that we're finding jobs for our students.
Yeah, and I think the work experience that I took at TSN 1290 was one of my favorite things of the course. I think it was so cool that you got to go work for this company that you have so much respect for, and then you get to kind of learn the ropes of what they do too. I know when I was attending the course for the work experience, we had to come in contact with the employers ourselves instead of you guys doing it for us. How important do you think it is for it to be like that for the students to kind of get their foot in the door that way?
Well, it's I think it's so important. It's that first contact, right? It's getting out there and not being afraid to market yourself. As students, as they get further into their career, they're going to realize is that I can't pick up the phone and get them a job, right? They still have to make the call. I may be able to say, hey, I know somebody over there. They're interested in hiring. I can put in a good word for you. That's great. Now you still have to get the phone and call somebody. Which is scary for nowadays because everybody used to texting and stuff like that. But kids will do that, and I make them call place after place until they find something. And when they lock something down, they're pretty excited about it because they found it. Like if I were to turn around and say, "Hey, Graeme, I found your work experience. You're going to work for AYZ company, and they produce commercials, and you're not interested in doing commercials at all." You're not probably going to want to do it, right? And you'll go reluctantly. But this was better. And for a guy like you that wanted to do sports, it was like a no-brainer, right? You ended up, going to TSN, you learning from pros, the guys in the industry, and you're sitting there and you're going, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to end up, right? And doing work like this in sports. You're excited to go to work experience, just like you're excited to go to school if you're interested in something, right? If you're not interested in what you're learning, it's a hard sell. And the comment I think everybody says is, if you have fun at your job, it'll never feel like you're working. Something along those lines. It's true, right? If you go to your work every day, it's not going to, you love it. You're not going to feel like you're working.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing too, is enjoying what you're actually doing. And for you guys to offer this work experience is so cool. And it's one of the things that I think is so unique about your program. That's a bit of a cliche word, but yeah, I'm going to use it, unique. So COVID-19, big pandemic, worldwide pandemic. It's affected a lot of businesses, and it's affected your program because you guys haven't been able to do your normal broadcasts and everything you guys usually do that COVID-19 has kind of blocked you from doing, so to say. So how have you guys adapted to the changes COVID-19 has brought?
That's an interesting question. And the reason why it's interesting is like, I'm not the only teacher, right? In terms of teaching stuff across the province, it's been a difficult change. And we're trying our best to make things work, and nobody expected this obviously to go to this level. And, I'm just grateful that, we took matters like this into our own hands, and the province kind of said, no, we're going to close things down. I think it was a great move. And what I liked about it was our school division right away jumped on and said, okay, here's some ideas, some stuff you guys can use for software. And they were very proactive right off the hop because they could see where things were headed. And I fortunately had some training in some of the software that they gave us, so it was easy to start integrating stuff right away. But when it came to teaching, there are so many different tools nowadays. And what I say to kids is like, for example, I said, this thing right here, your cell phone, it's a camera. It's also now an editor because you can install software that's professional software right on these phones and edit. So I said, you can go outside, go shoot me something like this, and then edit it together and then post it. And then I could see that they got some basic concepts. So we started that right off the hop. So that was easy. And then the second thing was like, well, how do I teach something like multi-camera production? I said, it's a little tough, but that's also encompassing like, how do you host? How do you do that? So we came up with an idea. So we couldn't do our weekly news show anymore, but I said, why don't we do interviews with people? I said, I think we can make this work. So kids took it upon themselves. They got guests. They invited them just like we're doing here right now. And the guests would call in, and we'd have an opening, we'd have a closing, we had graphics, just like you see on the screen here. And the students would interview a bunch of different people. They interviewed some bomber, they interviewed the mayor of Winnipeg, a bunch of different people, from doctors. It was really cool. And a lot of the students were digging really, really hard at this. And they could see that this was something to keep them connected with what's going on at the school, and still be feeling like they're doing something every day. So it was a really good experience. Now, is there some things that's hard to do? Yeah, there's some things that are hard to teach. It's hard to teach how to use a camera lens when you don't actually have one in front of you to play with. Yeah, we can look at pictures, but it's not the same. That tactile approach of it, being able to touch something, makes such a big difference. And I really like The fact that our division was positive in some ways because they turned around and I said, my kids need their computers from the lab. And they said, giddy up, let's go. And they got them all prepped and ready. We gave them to the kids so I could teach them how to edit still from home. So has it been difficult? Yes. But we've made a lot of great changes. And I think the kids will still be able to come back to school with very little recovery learning. I think we will, it'll be a change when we go back in September. I think that'll also happen. But I still think it'll be good. I think the kids will be ready.
Nice. And I forgot to ask this question, was that when I was in the course, of course, traditional schooling, there's note taking, there's memorization, but at ATC, you guys take more of an approach of a hands-on approach. So what was the decision to really go with that approach instead of just really sitting around and just taking notes like a normal classroom would?
I can't speak to every teacher. My philosophy has always been, and maybe it's just because it's me, I'm always been one of those learners that I have to do it. And if I don't touch the equipment, I'm not going to learn. So I've always had that approach with kids and said, don't be scared. And, of course, when you hand them a camera that's worth $12,000 and they're scared they're going to drop it. Yeah, it's good to be scared because then you'll respect it. And then you won't be as scared of it because you're respecting it. And you'll treat it very carefully. And once they get comfortable, you find out very quickly that they want to keep playing with it. Like, can I go take the big camera? Yeah, go ahead, take the big camera and go shoot. Or go take the cinema camera and go learn how to do this. Go sit on the switcher. Once they understand the value of things and then they get rid of that fear, learning becomes fun. And I think that's what's important. I mean, there is some notes. Like I won't lie. Like we have some stuff that we have to review, but in general, I think the kids realize that if I was giving a percentage, the kids realize it's like 25-75. 25% of theory, 75% is going to be hands-on, and that hands-on approach to me is so important because you can easily teach somebody something if you sit down with them and you work with them. And the kids that we have, of course, they want to do this, so they want to keep chomping at the bit and learning. And I think it works. I really do think it works.
Well, Ken, it's been great talking to you today here on the network. Thank you so much for joining the show today. It's always nice talking to you and nice to catch up with you, man. We'll see you soon, hopefully, and you have yourself a good one.
You too. Thanks so much, Graeme.
Yeah, no problem, Ken. Take care. Well, that was Ken Plaetinck of the Arts and Technology Center. He's the broadcast media teacher once again, and just great to hear some insight from a pro, a bit different than our other interviews where we have athletes on. Just thought it'd be a nice change of pace today, and it seems like they're doing great. And from me to my old broadcasting school, I hope them the best in everything they do. And that's going to do it for another episode of Coffee with Graeme. I didn't say it in the intro, but hope you guys had your cup of coffee or whatever you guys were drinking today and had a good time watching the show today. And we've had some small but pretty solid support so far here on the show, and with all our shows on the network. We're getting a ton of support, so we can't thank our viewers enough, and our sponsors, of course. Thanks for supporting the show today. Without you guys, none of this is possible. And until next time, I'm Graeme Forsyth of Amateur Sports TV signing off. Stay safe, and until next time, have yourselves a good one.